Hi guys, welcome in another episode of Creating Workkit. Today we're going to start where we left off. So we'll focus on the chat, in detail on the chat composer and sending messages. Okay, so let's get started. Behind the scenes, I created this little placeholder when the conversation is not selected on the sidebar. So just to make it look nicer, just a little touch. But I think that's pretty much it. We should dive into the code. Okay, so pretty much the chat panel should be shown when someone clicks on the sidebar. We can approach this in many ways. We could use Vuex or pass down the props. We could also do it the event-oriented way, at least before we switch to Vuex. So a nice little thing you can do is create an event pass in Vue. So basically what you want to do is you want to create a new event pass. Here we have to import the view from Vue, and then what we want to do is export const event pass, and it should do the trick. It's how I like to start doing the more complicated stuff in Vue before switching to Vuex. Sometimes this may be enough, but not really. It's getting kind of messy if you go on like this. So just let's leave it for now. So in the sidebar, we could import our event pass. And then switch our old parent mate to just event pass data mate, and let's call it chat room selected and pass the ID. That's good. It should be like this. Sorry. We could also export default and then just export new view, but I like it more this way. If you want to export something else, it's easier to add in this syntax. Okay, so that should be working. And now in the chat panel, we want to listen on the event. So we have to do the same thing. Chat room selected, and use the arrow functions. We'll get event. Okay, great. So let's just console log the event and see what we get. Oh yeah, it seems like I forgot to return an object. This should fix it. Okay, it did. So now if we click, we are seeing the console log, so that's great. So we'll get an ID as a callback, and then what we need to do is assign these to our data. I made a quick check here just to show the placeholder. Change it to selected and selected. Oh, sorry. This dot selected. Oh, this is even unnecessary. Okay, so this should work. And it does. So that's great. Sweet. So let's think about this. When somebody switches the conversation, we should fetch the messages of from that room. So maybe first write the frontend for that, and then we'll move to the backend. Fetch conversation for given ID. Okay, so let's just assign this to our data. Then we want to make an Ajax call. We can actually just copy it from our sidebar, make the method async, and messages should be an array. So now by using the template syntax, we can pass the ID, and let's say that it should work for us. So now what we have to do is create a new route that would actually return us the messages. To keep things simple, let's put it in the chat controller. If it gets too clunky, then we'll think of some proper refactor. Okay, but what will happen if somebody that doesn't have an access wants to access this route? It will show them the messages. So to prevent that, what we actually want to do is create a form request. Let's call it access or maybe just fetch messages request. And we won't be really using the rules, so leave them as empty array. What we really want is an authorize. So we should only fetch the messages if these root of chatroom members where member ID is this user ID exists. This should work. So now we'll simply return all the messages from chatroom. We'll paginate them, let's say, into 25 messages per page. And we'll actually be returning them into reverse order. So order by created at, I will, if we can even call latest. Yep. So let's check if anything is really working. Give it a refresh, click that. We got 500. Column member ID not found. Yeah, sorry, it was called user ID. And as you can see, we got the data in the paginator, so that's great. Now we need to render these messages and give it some styling. So actually I created a small component called message composer. I will show you how this looks in a little bit. Before I show you what I created, one thing we have forgot about is to eager load the sender, so the person that sent the message. And actually, if we go to the message, we need to set up the relationship. So one message belongs to one user by sender ID, I believe. Let's check this one. Create messages. Yeah, it was sender ID, so this should be working. Yeah, let's just see the network. We have the data, we have the sender. So what we did wrong is we didn't specify the key because we have the pagination. So our actual data is like one layer deeper. So as you can see, it's working. It's looking really bad. I think I have, yeah, the height should be like 6. Yeah, that looks kind of better. Okay, so let's take a look into our message composer. It's right there. I had some inspiration with how the Workkit chat is looking. I think it's looking quite nice. At the moment it's overflowing the screen a little bit, but but we'll handle this later. It's nothing crucial. And basically it does 2 things. So it has a button that when you click in, it executes the send message event, and if you type enter. Yeah, one thing I also forgot to finish is the date filter. So let's get that resolved before moving on. So our filter is using the moment.js library to format the data. If we take a look, it is working fine now. Okay, so back to the message composer. As you can see, we didn't link any events to it. So it's just doing the send message, and send message should simply emit an event that we're listing out here. So that's just message. Emit message with the stat message. it shouldn't be async because we are not doing any XHR calls. So now you can see that it's emitting the event here, and then we are listening to that event in our panel and running the add message command, which is simply console logging it. Yeah, so what we could do is create a post request, post to server, and then get a response of new message, and then append it to the list. Okay, so let's do this. So let's start with a root. It will be a post to the same URL, I guess. I think the chat controller is getting a little bit messy, but let's just wait for the refactor. I guess we could do this next episode. So when you see these keywords that are repeating itself into a controller, it's a overall like a good indicator that it's time to refactor. Okay, so similarly as before, let's create a message create request. We'll actually change this name because that's not really my convention. I usually do noun, then action, then request keyword, so just to be consistent. So this would be messages fetch request. Let's refactor messages fetch request. That's great. Okay. The authorization part should be the same. And now in the rules, we will set the content to required, let's say a minimum of 1 and maximum of 4096. And now simply message create request, and we also get a chat room. Now we could do something like request user send message to chat room and then pass the request. This doesn't seem too bad. But I think like we should, as for now, focus on the features, and later we can make the code more synthetic sugar. So just stick with the full Laravel eloquent methods. So we'll messages create, and then we'll pass the request validated. And we'll just return it. It should be parsed, or make it more readable by doing this. And actually this won't work because our request validated would only return us the content of the message. We also would be needing the chat room ID. We could just do it like this. So we have content set to request content, and then chatroom ID sent to chatroom ID. Yeah, it should be an array, of course. Okay, in situations like this, I like to extend the form request validated method to make it return us this data, and then we can simply use the request validated in controller, which makes the code kind of simpler. So how we can do this? We can create the validated, then we can send the data to this validator. This is how we can get the validator object, and then call the validated. So this would get us an array where we have the content. We only have to assign the chatroom ID and then return the data. So the chatroom ID is really simple. We just have to get it from this, and this should do the trick. If we go here, we can make the call. And then wait for the data. We actually have to be making a post request and also pass the content as event. Maybe just change it to the content. Check if it's working. Hi there, buddy. Yeah, we got 500. User messages. So we don't have this relationship set up. So user has many messages via the sender ID. Check it once again. Hi there. Oh, and as you can see, it got created. So now the last thing we need to do is really push it to the to our messages list. So simply these messages push the data. And let's check if it's working. Hello there. Oh yeah, we actually like the issue happens here because we are trying to access the sender of the message. However, in our create message controller, in our chat controller, we are not loading the message. Sorry, the sender. So by doing this, we should be able to make it work. And we did. It's working. However, we have our order messed up. So we should actually be ordering by the created at in ascending order. And now, yeah, it's showing up in the proper order. And this one is working as well. Just before we finish, let us set the message to null so we can quickly compose the next one when we are done with when this one is set, pretty much. So the message should be emptied out. I think like at this stage it's a good thing, at least for now. So this message, set it to an empty string. Either. Okay, it works. In next episode we'll get real with Laravel Eco. Thank you very much for your time and hope to see you in next episode. Cheers.